Well, well, well. Do I feel a strong feeling of vindication right now?
Probably, but that is completely independent of there being any reason for you to feel
Ain't that
vindicated.
right, Luna? Don't I stand vindicated as fuck right now?
Probably not. But go on. We have one. What if? Let's judge this for ourselves.
So, if you've been a long-term viewer of mine, you might remember a little bit of an ancient drama that happened on my channel, in which there was this sort of kind kind of a Twitter war that I and my audience engaged in from a lot of 2019 to like 2021.
Okay. See, I mean, Vosh tries to be a little bit cagey about the hate mobs he sends out, and here's fucking Xanderhole being like, "Yeah, we started a Twitter
I'd
war."
say against a group of people on Twitter, one can only label the label of woke scold.
Okay. So this is already yes. This is already looking much more promising. So okay, so these are people who aren't white supremacists, basically the people that you decided to have this Twitter war against.
Now, these people are basically very, very over the top, like stereotypical lefties who get overly offended at every little thing.
Yeah, you don't get to. You're an ex-Nazi, motherfucker. You don't get to say that. You don't get to be the one who gets to criticize people for being overly offended over everything. You still got the fact that you're an ex-Nazi to live down, and you've never actually shown any desire to truly reckon with that. You've just fucking monetized it. You got to talk about how people are easily offended. Fuck off. You're offended by the existence of the concept of ableism, apparently.
They use their identity as a crutch or a shield, while at the same time,
I mean, that's actually kind of ableist too, incidentally, because the thing about a crutch is the reason you use a crutch, unless you're like beating somebody down with it, which I mean, a different use case entirely. But the reason you use a crutch is because you're hurt and you need it to walk. That's not a bad thing. That's not like a criticism.
engaging in the most abusive, hateful behavior towards others. They virtue signal nonstop.
Oh god, I should have like a far right buzzword counter when I do him.
Concern, troll, and engage in harassment and cancel culture to a degree.
Oh God, he's just there. We go. That's the third fash buzzword.
That is beyond anything you could consider reasonable. I think we all know the types of people I'm talking about here. Well, I had my run-ins with that crowd on Twitter, and I still do to this day, though I feel like I've BTFO'd them enough now that they don't give me much issues anymore.
So okay, once again, this is him just talking about how he harasses people to the left of him.
However, we're dipping our toes back into it today, and I feel quite vindicated because for a while, I used to argue that if this mindset of over fragility, of hyper fragility, and that's what it is hyper fragility,
Okay. What is it? What is what it is that it is hyperfragility?
becomes too dominant in the left, it will extend beyond simply being intolerant of harmful rhetoric or harmful words. And
BTFO Jill means back the fuck off. I think. I'm assuming that that's what it stands for in this case. I mean, it could be bought the fucking olive oil.
expanding to a hyper.
I'd like to start a meme where BTFO stands for bought the fucking olive oil. Just to be just very confusing and surreal.
Esoteric, over the
Are
top,
you gonna tell us what you're talking about?
ridiculous crackdown socially on things that are tangentially, barely, arguably problematic.
Okay, what are you talking about here? Like, are you gonna tell us what you're talking about? We're 2 minutes into this thing. We still don't know what you feel vindicated by.
So, this is what we're talking about today. This tweet didn't get a lot of support, thankfully, only 734 likes, but it got a whole lot of quote tweets.
Okay, some ableist words you should probably cut out of your vocabulary because they're ableist. Yeah, all of those. Every single one of those. That's quite right. All of those things are ableist. I mean, like, this is a good list. And anyone who tries to pretend that intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, mental health disabilities aren't disabilities, that somehow doesn't fall under ableism, probably either at best they just really haven't given the whole thing a whole lot of thought. But in the case of Xanderhole, I think he's spent enough time thinking about it that he knows perfectly well that what he's doing is fucked up.
Some ableist words you should probably cut out of your vocabulary because they're ableist. Idiot or idiotic. Crazy. Differently abled. Well, I mean, that's okay. Dumb.
Well, if you say so, Xanderhole, since you are the arbiter of all that is good, apparently.
Insane. Lame. Moron. Psycho. Well, okay, psycho's arguably ableist.
What do you mean it's arguably ableist? All of these things are arguably I mean, they're more than arguably. And how are you going to say that psycho is arguably ableist but insane is not?
Specially abled. That's okay, ableist or stupid. Okay.
So, okay, now remember the title of this thing, as you can see at the top of the screen, I believe, is everything. No, you actually can't. You can't see it at the top of the screen. I did not crop this well. Is everything is ableist. And so far, what he's talking about is how like literal ableist slurs are ableist.
Especially if you've these words for a long time, it'll take time to cut it out. If you do accidentally say one, just say sorry, I mean whatever non-ableist word instead. Unlearning these things takes time. We appreciate the actual effort.
Well, yeah, okay, that's a very reasonable thing to say. Like, what is he? Okay, this is like the most accommodating way somebody could possibly say this. Yeah, and he's getting offended by it, and he's going to talk about some hyper fragility.
I'm sorry, guys, but there is no other way to describe this tweet and this mindset other than hyper fragile.
You're offended by somebody just saying try to make the effort to cut these ableist words out of your vocabulary, dude. You don't get to talk about somebody being hyper fragile just for pointing out some ableist shit. Oh yeah. Hey, if you start a GoFundMe for that, Phoenix, first of all, probably leave the bit about chasing him down out of it. They might not approve that, but also drop a link in the Discord and I will share that. I mean, I don't have much of a reach, but I'll certainly help out.
Now, I'm not actually arguing that this mindset's a sincere threat to the left. I don't.
Well, that's thank fuck for that, because the idea that maybe the left should not be a place that is hostile to people with disabilities, including mental health disabilities and developmental disabilities, I would like to think that that's a kind of basic thing that we would consider part of being on the left, as opposed to being harmful. I mean, and first of all, and also, dude, your entire unique selling point is you're an ex-Nazi. You don't get to talk about what's harmful to the left. You're part of what's harmful to the left.
listen, I don't want you guys to think you need to go harass this person or go tell them how it really is or anything. Don't go after this person.
Oh, yes, don't go after this person. I have made every effort to identify to the person, to an audience that is notorious for harassing people.
Let's just laugh at this person through the glass. You know, it's like a zoo, right? You laugh at the dumb fucks through the glass, but you don't actually
Well, let's see, that's a word she should have added. I mean, okay, one thing we could say about this list is incomplete. That, the one he just said, that goes on there.
go through the glass and fuck with the animals, right? Listen, if this mindset were to become so so strong among the left that you literally could not step out of line with this.
Then people with disabilities would not constantly be in a hostile environment on the left. That sounds like a good thing. You're threatening me with a good time right now, Xanderhole. Like, I mean, what you seem to be saying is you like to say ableist shit, sort of like you like to say anti-Semitic shit, like you like to say other racist shit. Like, you just kind of like to say pretty reactionary shit a whole lot of the time. And you're feeling that if there are standards, like if people say that the dignity of people with disabilities comes before your desire to use ableist slurs, then the left is not a hospitable place for you. And the thing is, it shouldn't fucking be a hospitable place for you.
Without getting socially ostracized, like legit socially ostracized, there would really be no way for left-wing pundits, left-wing debaters, left-wing political analysts, or basically lefty insert the people whose job it is to convince people they ought to be left-wing people
Wait, there would be. Is he saying.
would not be capable of criticizing the mental state in.
Wait, so criticizing the mental state of somebody, that's the fucking problem, dude. That's what's wrong with this. That's why it's ableist. Why are we criticizing the mental state? Why don't we criticize the behavior and the ideology and the moral character of what's going on?
Any subtle way, nor the way through which conservatives reach their positions on a logical level.
Well, yeah, I see. That's funny because I have done everything I can to keep all of these words out of my mouth and out of my pen for quite some time now. And I can tell you, I have no trouble criticizing how reactionaries get there. I mean, it's motivated reasoning, it's believing propaganda that happens to be convenient and fit in with their, like, self-image. And in a lot of the time, it's rich motherfuckers whose class interest lies in making up wild bullshit in order to convince people to go against their class interest. See, wow, I just did the impossible. I just I just provided a fundamental criticism of the entirety of right-wing rhetoric, including Xanderhole's, and without using any of those fucking words or any allusion to any of those fucking words.
You're literally taking away the ability to, like on a social level, if you argue this is genuinely something that lefties ought to phase out of their vocabulary, taking away the ability to insult the intelligence of conservatives.
That's okay. Wow, you're so close to the point. The whole thing is that we're trying not to treat intellectual and developmental disabilities like there's something people should be ashamed of because it's just something that people have. I mean, especially at a time when COVID is doing all sorts of fucked up brain damage to people. And people are having to live with that. That's not their fucking fault. That's not something they should feel ashamed of. And I honestly don't think that we should have a culture that makes them feel ashamed of that any more than somebody who has it for any other fucking reason. There's why do we need to insult their intelligence? We've got so many better ways of insulting them. Why don't we insult their moral character? Nobody's telling you not to do that. I'm happy to insult their moral character. I do it all the time. I'll insult. See, let me show you how you do it, Xanderhole. I'll do it with you, and that's how I'm going to wrap up the stream. See, Xanderhole, you're completely full of shit. You are just completely driven by monetizing your personal political and moral failure of buying into the far right, and you do it from clearly a position of considerable privilege, because that looks like a pretty expensive digs you got there. You show absolutely no interest in understanding anything you do not already know. You are actively hostile to ideas that are unfamiliar to you or that in any way challenge your fucked up reactionary worldview. And you really don't want anything to get between you and your fucking revenue stream. There we go. See, I just provided a pretty biting, I would say, fundamental criticism of Xanderhole. Didn't insult his intelligence once. I don't care about his intelligence. I mean, if he's more intelligent, then that doesn't make him better. Somebody who is like more intelligent and is saying all this bullshit, what that means is that, I mean, first of all, let's knock this on the head. The intelligence is not a single trait. It is not a thing that people have or lack, and it is not a thing that can be measured by fucking IQ. That's just some bullshit that's invented basically to do racism better. This is not a single trait. But if somebody has, I mean, if somebody has a greater ability to perceive and analyze, let's say, and comprehend ideas like this and says this stuff, that they have less of an excuse to say it. Like, insulting his intelligence would be to suggest he can't help it. I think, and I don't know. I don't know whether he can help it. I don't care whether he can help it. I just don't like what he's doing, and I'm going to point out what's wrong with it, and take the piss out of him for it occasionally. See, isn't that interesting how I managed to go through a very detailed critique? The very thing he says is totally impossible without using one ableist slur. Because it's not hard. The English language has tens of thousands of words, and a lot of them are excellent ways to throw shade at an asshole. Like, you can call him an asshole, for example. And with that, it is after 1 o'clock, and I am going to wrap up. As always, I will be back tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Thanks to everybody who stopped by. Thank you for spending this hour and a half with me. I always enjoy it. And if you're not already in the Discord, let me just drop that link one more time, as well as my tip jar. If you enjoy the stream, please consider paying for the stream. It helps pay the bills, helps me do more of what I enjoy doing, and what you seem to enjoy as well. It These are hard times, and I wouldn't want anyone to feel pressured to do it, but if you can and you want to, I appreciate it if you do. Have a very good night, and we'll get back to this tomorrow. He'll keep. Well, yes, yeah, that's not just a new thing either. This is like when Tim Pool freaked out at the idea that having a problem with immigrants was now nativist. Well, I mean, bigots just hate it when you have a word for their beliefs. Yeah, I mean, I mean language is only part of the issue, but I mean, not using fucking slurs is probably not a bad idea. I mean, and that's enough to make Xanderhole kick off. Now, this is the guy, mind you, who says that there should be no barriers to Nazis joining the left. If they say I'm reformed now, you're not allowed to do anything to make them earn your trust. You're not allowed to insist that they make amends or anything like that. No, no, you have to let him in because that's restorative justice. But when somebody says this sort of invective is actually creating a hostile environment on the left for people with disabilities, particularly developmental and intellectual disabilities, he's like, no, 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 fuck them.
Those that subtle way, nor the way through which
Does that sound better?
conservatives reach their positions on a logical level. You're literally taking away the ability like on a social level, if you argue this is genuinely something that lefties
Well, I'm gonna clip this, so I might as well fix the volume now, rather than having to go through in post. I've occasionally had to do really, really long edits, where every single thing Caleb Maupin is saying is so fucking quiet that I have to, like, do volume normalization on 30 different clips. And it is just such a pain in the ass, so I'd rather back up and do it now.
ought to phase out of their vocabulary, taking away the ability to insult the intelligence of conservatives.
Out of all the things to say about conservatives, out of everything you could say about reactionaries, I mean, the thing is, insulting their intelligence actually is letting them off, apart from the fact that it creates a hostile environment for people with fucking intellectual and developmental disabilities. It lets them off easy because what you're saying when you make it about their intelligence is that they don't know any better. And they know better. They know fucking better. I mean, there may be a few of them who don't, but the ones who are actually selling this stuff, you can often, if you look carefully, it turns out they're very much not buying it. So you're giving them an out.
Because insulting one's intelligence is now by default ableist.
No, it isn't. It's not that it's now by default ableist. It's just that it always was, and now you're getting upset about that.
No, it's context. Listen.
Okay, yeah, okay. Give me an example of a context where using ableist invective to insult somebody based on the premise that they have an intellectual or developmental disability isn't ableist. Come on, go ahead.
Always really bugged me, and I know that people aren't going to find this genuine. Those that want to get offended by what I'm about to say here are going to look past all of the logic in it. Something that's always bothered
all of the logic. I mean, you know, we're gonna see tons of it. It's gonna be fucking scholarship we're about to see here.
Me about the people who hyper focus on the use of, say, the word retard when it comes to ableism. Something that's always bothered me so much about that is that when you hyper focus on that and you hyper fixate on that, words that sound mean but even in their own context aren't even being used in anywhere close to an ableist context, like,
for example, come on. Yeah. Where's the logic? You're gonna give us an example, right, of what it looks like to insult somebody by claiming they have a disability in a non-ableist context.
When somebody says, and I quote, "that video game is retarded," is that ableist?
Yes, it fucking is. Yes. Yeah, that's fucking ableist, dude. That's like, I mean, that's your example for how this is being that's your example for how this is being blown out of proportion, is just using the totally gratuitously using an ableist slur in order to say a video game sucks. Well, yeah, I mean, there is, like, the only sense in which I can think of where it is not a slur, potentially, is as a verb. As a noun, it most certainly is.
Is there any ableist sentiment there?
Yes, there is, because you're saying the video game is bad, and the way you're saying it's bad is by comparing it to a person with a fucking developmental disability.
Genuinely, I want you to think on it.
I didn't need to. This is not a fucking gray zone. You have not entrapped us in a web of logic. Maybe the logic's coming next. I should be fair. Maybe he's like saved the logic for the end. You know, it's the wonder weapon that was only going to be used once the Soviet Union basically controlled all of Berlin.
Besides any ableist subtle, bias that might have lent them to use the
subtle, you literally just used a fucking slur. Like, not even something, not something that was invented as a slur to insult people. What the fuck? well, I mean, if his aspiration is to be a prick, I mean, he's got to be one of the happiest men on Twitch because he's living the dream.
Word in the first place, is there ableist sentiment in them calling a game the Arsler? No.
Yes. Yes, there fucking is. Okay, go
They
on.
aren't literally or even implying that a video game can be in any way mentally deficient, or frankly, can even have
Mentally deficient isn't a great term either, there, Xanderhole. Well, as a noun, it certainly was.
any like lessened mental capacity. That's not possible, nor is it even possible on a figurative level.
Okay, so go on. What is so you're going to explain what it means, what that means, since you're not saying that the video game has a disability. We got that. We got that. So, okay, go on. Let's have the rest of your very short train of thought.
It's literally just being used as a harsh sounding word to describe a thing that isn't stupid. It's like if you know how on the school.
So what you're saying is that they're using it to say that something is bad, that something sucks. And the word they use likens it to a person with a disability. Okay, go on. Let's hear how this isn't ableist. The logic is coming. Yeah, I mean, as an adjective, it does exist as a clinical thing, which is another reason not to fucking use it. Really. Yeah, but as a noun, it most certainly is.
Schoolyard, you say, this game is stupid. It's like
That's also not great.
a more mature adult sounding, more guttural sounding way of saying that to a lot of people, and I am
Yeah, okay. We're getting a very interesting look at what he thinks sounds more mature.
not defending it here. I am
Yes, you fucking are. You said it isn't ableist. Like, how are you not defending it? You are arguing for its acquittal from the charge of ableism of which it is guilty.
simply making a factual statement about how the majority of people use the R slur.
Yeah, the majority of... That's the problem, though. The majority of people completely thoughtlessly use ableist invective. That's kind of the issue. That's why she specifically said it in these accommodating terms, where she specifically said, you know, you probably don't realize it, but this stuff can be pretty ableist. Although in that case, I don't buy that somebody doesn't realize it, because most of the time those same people will also do a fucking imitation in order to...
This is just true. I'm not even defending it. I think the R slur is harmful. I do.
Yeah, and yet you fucking used it rather than just saying the R slur.
You think it is. I think that especially when streamers and content creators in the left-wing communities use it, even like I just did.
Yeah, exactly, like you just did. That's fucked up. And why? And what? Okay, any left-wing communities got you in it? That ain't left-wing. Okay.
It can have harmful effects, and it's why I make sure that the cases where I do use the R slur are in contexts where I'm actively calling out.
You could just say the R slur. Like, I mean, this is like his N-word. He absolutely, the pleasure he gets from saying the R slur. Like, I don't know if I've experienced pleasure like that in my life. This is like fucking the quartering with the N-word or something.
Now, ableism. So let's bring it back around to the ableism I'm calling out. When people
You haven't called out any ableism though, so what's this?
hyper focus on these like really aesthetically easy examples of ableism to call out, it feels like it distracts a lot from like the more subtle forms of ableism. Or
Wait. So, except that this is in response to somebody on Twitter pointing out examples of the more subtle forms of ableism, and you freaked out and got really, really offended because this means that people are being too fragile. Like, pick a fucking team, dude. Like, are you on team that stuff? The more subtle forms of ableism aren't ableism, Or are you on team we need to focus on all of the ableism, including the more subtle forms of it? You can't. The kind of splits that this guy is doing right now could get him on the Olympic gymnastics team.
Or more like institutional forms of ableism that, I'm going to be honest with you guys, matter more. Okay?
Well, okay, but wait a second. You were going to give us an argument on why that stuff wasn't ableism, and now you're conceding the point that it is ableism? And saying it, but it's not the sort of ableism we should care about, which is kind of fucking convenient, isn't it? That the kind of ableism that he's offended that somebody pointed out is the kind of ableism he doesn't think we should worry about too much. Like,
Right now, access to mental health care, or even like for healthcare that like when you have a disability that's like ongoing and long term in much of the world, not just America, is very, very strenuous. Our culture heavily stigmatizes people with mental disabilities.
yeah, well, yes, exactly. And the thing is, that's why the person that you decided to put on blast here said what she said. Well, what they said. I didn't see what their pronouns were. Um, but I mean, come on. We've gone full circle here. He's gone from saying it's not ableist, that it's absurd to call it ableist, that it's over fragile to call it ableist, and now he's saying, well, it's ableism, okay, but we shouldn't be focusing on it.
Or not even like mental disabilities, but with mental conditions like sociopathy.
Oh, well, it's interesting that that's the one he picks. That's the one he picks. Because the thing that people like this, who like to sort of shit on ableism as even existing as a concept, what they ignore is that the whole point of ableism is that disability is socially constructed. There's a reason that the fact that I need glasses doesn't count as a disability, and it's because there's no social stigma on it outside of maybe a few I mean, actually, and at primary school you might get stigmatized a little bit about it. Maybe that doesn't go on anymore, but that's about it. Okay, I mean, you people aren't, unless it's a job that requires extremely precise eyesight, and even then, if corrected lenses work, you're going to probably get it. Nobody's getting fucking stigmatized for wearing eyeglasses, so that doesn't count. You get stigmatized and marginalized from society. If you get marginalized from society and stigmatized for it, then it's a disability. And the thing, when you look at what he's calling sociopathy, what the DSM calls antisocial personality disorder, when you look at the traits that are described, they are not stigmatized traits in this society. They are traits that will actually get you very far because it's all about not giving a shit about other people. In fact, it's one of the very few diagnoses in the DSM that does not have to cause the person being diagnosed any distress because it generally does not cause them any distress. I mean, that is not a good example. Not giving a shit about other people is not a trait that is stigmatized in this society. You can get far. I mean, Xanderhole is an example. The less you give a shit about other people, the more we're willing to just throw other people under the bus because it's convenient, the farther you will go in the society. So that is not a stigmatized disability. That is not a thing that people are being marginalized for. Those traits are things that actually are very heavily valued in our social hierarchy.
PTSD, bipolar disorder, what is it? Dissociative identity disorder. What else? Antisocial personality disorder.
You just already said that, except you called it sociopathy. Yeah, just get do you research anything before you say it?
All of these different things have been heavily stigmatized to an extent, or even depression. All of these things have been so weirdly stigmatized and
Well, it's not weird. You see, find the one that isn't. First of all, let's just leave aside the fact that the traits that make up the diagnostic criteria of ASPD are not stigmatized. They are in fact rewarded in capitalism. We'll leave that aside. But I mean, it is just weird that out of all of them, out of all the things he puts on the weird girl to trans mask pipeline, I like that. So he's got ASPD and then and DID and fucking and depression and bipolar disorder and all these other things that cause people who have them significant distress in addition to causing them social marginalization and all sorts of other bullshit. And he sticks in the one that where the diagnostic criteria basically mean you will throw anyone under the bus and can lie without actually showing a sign of it.
Such harmful ways by pop culture and media that it's like it's just ignored. It's just ignored, and
Wait, what the fuck is this? He's talking about now how it's ignored. He started this out by getting annoyed that somebody pointed it out at all. And then he decided to make it about fucking antisocial personality disorder for some reason. It's like, do you have a position on this? Other than that you want to use ableist slurs? Like, have you given this any thought at all, or do you just get drunk, get on, turn on your fucking Yeti mic, and just trust your luck?
Worst memed about. And yet you see lefties on Twitter complaining about people calling a video game the R slur.
Well, I mean, see, the thing is, the existence of one bad thing does not. I mean, pointing out the existence of one thing that sucks does not preclude taking an interest in other things that suck. Like, I'm paying attention to Xanderhole now. It's true. He's a thing that sucks. Do you think that means that I don't think that the government's complete refusal to do a damn thing about COVID is a good thing because I'm focusing on fucking Xanderhole right now? It's like you can focus on multiple things that suck. You can point out there's no limit to how many things that suck you can point out.
I understand where the concern comes from.
Well, then why didn't you say that up front? You were calling it over fragile and saying that it was just nonsense to even suggest that these things were ableist a few minutes ago. This is wild.
Whew. Yeah. Not to mention, if we really want to delve into the philosophical end of things, like Bread.
Oh God, let's delve into the philosophical end of things with the Xanderhole. This should be. I mean, I've seen deeper mud puddles. Mask says I need to get better about just reading reading chat aloud. One day I'm going to merge tweet and chat mentally, and I'm going to say, okay, let's see what Twat has to say, and that's going to be a moment. I can just see myself doing it, and I'm going to be trying not to, and that's going to make it more likely. Mask says, you know what I think is really wild? I've seen people online complaining about people with ASPD being stigmatized. Yeah, and it's the weirdest thing. It is utterly weird. I mean, I think these people don't actually look at what the fucking definition of the thing they're talking about is. Because, I mean, people freak out when you say, actually, you're kind of just defending abusers, but the whole definition of the thing is that you're constantly engaging in abusive behavior and don't give a shit about the effect it has on other people. There are very few diagnoses in the DSM that are exempt for the criterion that it causes personal distress to the person diagnosed. I mean, the other ones have to do with, like pedophilia and fucking, coercive paraphilias, where the whole thing is that you're doing it to somebody who's unwilling. I think that's like the only example, and even then, There's something of a gray area, but ASPD is one that does not cause the slightest distress to the people who have it. It's not a distressing condition. They're fine. They're happy. In fact, they do pretty well. You'd probably say the way ambulatory wheelchair users are treated isn't important enough ableism, says Phoenix Rising 87, and yeah, he probably would. In fact, I think this it isn't important enough ableism is just something he's trotted out because he's realized that he said he was going to show us the logic of why it isn't ableist, couldn't, realized he couldn't, and so he decided in midstream to just hang a fucking Yui and and decide to make it about they're focusing on the less important ableism.
Breadwave just said. Breadwave in chat just brought up a good point. I was just about to get into that. If we really want to dig into the philosophical side of things, calling someone stupid is ableist.
You don't have to dig too deep into the philosophical. Okay, what even is this? Because he started out by freaking out at the idea that somebody would say that it was fucking ableist. This whole thing is because he's offended because somebody else pointed out that calling somebody that is ableist. And now he's saying, yeah, if you dig into the philosophical end of it, it's fucking ableist. Except that, actually, when you talk about ASPD, you are talking about abusers. By definition, it is people who abuse others and exploit them and feel absolutely no compunction and no shame about doing it. That is the definition of the thing. If we're going to use the diagnosis, we have to use the diagnostic criteria. And the thing is, people like that actually do pretty well. Using others is a trait that gets you far in capitalism.
Claiming that somebody's line of mental process they use to reach a conclusion is in some way faulty is ableist.
Well, it depends what you mean by mental process. If I say that your logic is faulty, if I say that what you're saying doesn't follow, I am criticizing your argument. I'm not criticizing the quality of your brain. I'm saying your argument makes no sense. That's not the same thing as outright saying that somebody's brain is somehow deficient.
At its core, that is ableist, objectively speaking. If I say the quartering is an idiot, that is ableist.
You just started out this whole fucking thing by saying that calling people those things wasn't ableist, and now you're just admitting the point? What is this? To give me whiplash? Is that what you're trying to do? We're focusing on it because if he actually had to acknowledge that using slurs that that stigmatize people with developmental disabilities is ableist and that is a bad thing, then maybe he would have to actually come up with better material, and he doesn't want to because he's a lazy fuck and he's only got one fucking gimmick.
I even said the quartering has brain damage earlier.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked up too.
That was ableist.
Yes, it was. Okay, so you agree. So what was all that bullshit from the first 10 minutes of the video then?
And yet, nobody really took issue with it, did they?
Well, probably because the people who take issue with it aren't in your fucking chat, Zan. Probably because the people who take issue with your bullshit don't come in here and watch your bullshit. Because if they call out your shit in chat, chances are they just might find themselves on the receiving end of one of your trademark dog piles. Yeah, exactly. The quartering is a sexist dipshit. He's a complete asshole. It is not hard to come up with pointed and accurate invective for somebody like the quartering. without fucking ableist invective. It is not hard. In fact, I made that point at the very end of my last stream, right when I was wrapping up. He was like, "Oh, but you can't criticize anyone then," and it's like, and so I decided to criticize him quite extensively without using any ableist invective because it isn't hard when you think about it. It takes some adapting, yes, initially, but it isn't hard. It can be done. You can write pointedly and argue pointedly without it, and it actually makes your arguments better.
Not really. Not except the conservatives that want to, concern, troll, and virtue signal. No one really got upset about it because,
Well, I mean, maybe the people who would get annoyed that you decided to take that tack probably don't watch you. So I think that some people would actually criticize that. Yeah, the quartering's an asshole. The quartering's just a complete piece of shit. I don't I know absolutely nothing about Zan's girlfriend. I I I congratulate her on being free of him though. I think that will be one of the best things that could possibly happen to her not being with him because he just seems like such a dipshit.
well, idiot and stupid, well, besides to this particular person, don't sound as mean as the R slur does.
Yeah, that's because we're not as sensitized to it though. That's like saying that if you talk about a globalist cabal, it doesn't sound as mean as the K slur. Yeah, that's because a lot of people aren't completely wise to what that first thing always fucking means, but they do know the other one. So much so that you don't really hear it a lot. I've never been called it anyway. I've never heard it used. I've heard all sorts of other fucking invective, but my point is, the reason it doesn't sound so bad is because people are less sensitized to it. It sounds pretty bad if you're aware of what the whole underlying idea is. Well, I'm certainly glad that you've managed to recover from the TBI at least as much as you have because it's always good to see you in chat. And I can imagine just how I mean that's got to be just absolutely excruciating a lot of the time.
Now, what really matters when we talk about why people use the words they use are the history behind those words, the effect they have, and the intent of said words.
Yes, and let's talk about the effect then. Let's hear about that a bit because like he's just all over the place here. Where are we going in the here? Oh yeah, I mean, it is an utterly mask off thing to say. It is like if you use the K slur, you're I mean, there's absolutely no question you're fucking anti-Semitic. Which is why even a lot of just like pretty hardcore Nazis will avoid doing it. Like that fucking Andrew Anglin has a style guide and he had actually specifications about why you should actually be a little bit careful about what you say about the J question and everything. Um but so I mean like even like some of the most anti-Semitic motherfuckers you'll find, they will not say it because it's just that mask off. There's absolutely like no legitimate reason somebody would say it or
And
call somebody that.
I agree that we ought to phase out the R slur from most common language, I think. At least
From most? What do you mean from most? Like where would you like to keep it?
in public discussion. I think the R slur has reached a level of infamy enough that it
Yeah, except the reason these things reach levels of infamy, I mean, it didn't used to have that level of infamy. And then largely, Like that fucking disability community raised awareness of how fucked up it was, and people started, decent people who heard that started to take notice of it and say, yeah, that actually is kind of fucked up, isn't it, and stopped using it. And so this person that you decided to shit all over, Xanderhole, was trying to do that with other examples of ableism. Oh, what, my video froze up?
It deserves to be called a slur. It's not as bad as most slurs. Doesn't mean saying it's not as bad as the N word.
Yeah, I don't quite understand why it's not as bad. Other than that he wants to say it sometimes. I mean, it is intended to just heap contempt on the group of people it targets. That's the point of it. I don't think you can say that it's better or worse. It's just targeting a different group of people. I mean, the fact that it targets a different marginalized group of people, I don't think makes it better. I think that that's kind of a weird way to think about it, like a hierarchy of them. I don't think there is one.
It's worse than the C slur that I can't say on Twitch for white people. It's worse than that. It's somewhere in that spectrum of severity.
Well, I mean, it's considerably worse than the saltine slur, because that's fucking punching up. Always has been fucking punching up. That is not the same thing. That's a complete red herring to bring into this discussion.
It's not so.
But then again, he believes in reverse racism, so all bets are off. Yeah, exactly. Both of them hurt, and both of them hurt a lot. I mean, and that's all we should really. I think that's all we should really care about. I don't think we need a tier list of slurs. I don't think that enhances our discussion. We just know they hurt people. They're used to hurt people. Sometimes, and in one case, sometimes very thoughtlessly. In one case, basically always very deliberately. Um, and that really ought to be all we need to know.
Bad that you can't say it in most spaces, but it's bad enough that you probably shouldn't say it publicly.
His cat has just popped up here because he was watching the stream in the other room. He said, "Wait a second! Without my supervision, this shit has gone totally off the rails. I need to be looking over this prick's shoulder." Trisket Americans.
To a larger audience that could potentially feel hurt by use of that word. That's my position on use of the R slur. It's been my position since.
So, like a couple of minutes ago, when you expressed a totally different position. Yeah, exactly. I will take his cat.
October 2020, I'd say.
See, they say everyone says cats feel superior to the humans they live with. That cat has some cats feel more superior to the humans they live with than others, and I think that cat probably has developed a huge ego living with Xanderhole.
Roughly, yeah, I'd say just about. But let's be real here. I think it's important that you be able to, just for the sake of basic human communication, that you are able to insult the intelligence on some.
Wait, okay. Wait. For this, okay. I am just utterly losing. I need a fucking diagram of this argument here because he started out saying that it was just wild that somebody was suggesting that insulting somebody's intelligence, suggesting they have an intellectual disability, was ableism. Then he said, yeah, it's ableism. It is ableism when you think about it, but it's not so bad. It's not as bad as the other things that I'm very, very briefly going to mention and then just completely dismissed. And now he's saying that actually sometimes you need to do ableism? Wait. Yes. And that's an insult to pasta. I love pasta. I would not want pasta. I wouldn't want his argument to look like pasta. It will look like something else, hopefully. Like a bunch of worms having a fucking orgy.
Level of conservatives, those that are actively making a devout effort to take away the rights of many a minority group across this glorious, lovely, flawless nation. Anyway, listen.
Well, if this is what his editors leave in, I wonder what the hell they cut. Like, I mean, seriously, they left all this crap in. This is edited. They could have made him say something halfway consistent. They could have done it fairly easy by just editing the bit out where he acknowledges the stuff is ableist, or editing out the bit where he denies it. And instead, they left all that in, but something there they just cut out.
I also want to talk about another side of this that isn't getting a lot of attention.
Yes, well, somebody there's two sides. There has to be two sides because it's Xanderhole, and will somebody think of the bigots?
And that's kind of the reaction to this tweet. I'm kind of playing into this, to be fair, but
Well, you mean by putting her on blast for making an entirely reasonable point that you actually conceded 10 minutes into your video?
8,617 quote tweets.
Yeah, and you're joining in. You're actually inviting more of that. There were probably more of those fucking quote tweets as this video went on, as your fucking audience of toxic waste fucking went to Twitter, looked her up, found the tweet, and quote tweeted it with some kind of ableist shit. Oh wait, somebody critical pulls asks Xanderhole for a slur tier list. Well, I mean that video I'm sure will be upcoming.
From this Twitter account with how many followers? 2,148 followers.
Still more than me, I have to say.
Their take was dumb, but
no, you conceded their point. Like, and here you are. Like, make up your fucking mind, dude. Make up your mind. Was it a bad take? Was it one that you kind of have to concede when you get deep into the philosophy, as Xanderhole loves to do? He loves to get deep into the philosophy. Uh, and now he's okay, like this diagram would look like the Windsor family tree, just a big fucking circle.
come on. This is clearly just an instance of a bunch of people feeling as though they have had their. I don't think.
Oh wait, okay, there was another cut there.
Most of the people that are quote tweeting this tweet have the same take as me.
Well, you've taken literally every possible position so far that you could take in response to this tweet. So I think at least some of them will. They won't necessarily have embraced all the contradictory takes that you have expressed in this very short video.
That, yeah, the R slur is bad, ableism is bad, we should analyze why we use certain words and when we use them and who we use them with.
Yeah, well, no, you actually said that ableism is not bad. It's necessary for human communication, at least when it pertains to slagging off people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I remember it very well because it was only a couple of fucking minutes ago. Yeah, exactly. Like, there are, in my reaction fodder playlist, just because they've shown up in my recommendations, some, like, reactionary asshole Caleb Muppet defenders who have as few subscribers on YouTube as I have. Thank you for all the subscribers I have. I do have. I'm quite proud to have managed to get to 241, but that's not exactly a whole lot when you look at, say, Xanderhole here, who's got tens of thousands. And I specifically do not touch their material, both because, I mean, in that case, mostly because I'm not interested in potentially signal boosting them, because at that point, when you're dealing with somebody with that small a presence, you actually probably are. But I mean, putting a random person on blast who has way less reach than you have, and then like getting precious about all the quote tweets that probably some of which were authored by the people in your chat, Xanderhole. That's the Xanderhole. That's the Xanderhole flair there.
with and what context they're used in. However, I don't think it is good to just broadly say these words are banned. You are a bad person if you
That's not what she said. She took a much.
don't try to phase them out of your vocabulary. Like,
That is not what she said. She didn't say that anyone was a bad person. She said that you should probably phase them out of your vocabulary because they're ableist. And she didn't even say this in a tone like you should already know this, you should have already stopped doing this. She started from the position that the people reading it probably hadn't given it any thought before, and that this might be new information for them. That was a very accommodating way of making that point. I know people, disability rights activists, who would like consider that utterly milquetoast. Who would take a much harder line on that because they're just kind of sick of this bullshit. But I mean, the line, she didn't say anything about somebody being a bad person. She said you should probably phase this stuff out because it's ableist, and you probably didn't already know that. She was about as nice about it as you can possibly be.
especially since they're broadly destigmatized and culturally accepted now. How old is this person anyway? Well, considering they are a Twitch streamer with a business email, I'm going to assume older than 18. If you take anything away from this segment, I just want it to be
Oh, yeah, let's hear this. What's the takeaway? What's the final thought? Like Jerry Springer always had.
that the types of people who go on Twitter and make broad statements that no matter what the context, this is always how you should act, usually you shouldn't listen
That's not the tone of what she said at all.
to people that speak that way.
Well, you speak that way, motherfucker. You said that she was a woke scold for raising the issue. You like literally used a far right slur to attack her for even bringing up the issue that you then conceded 10 minutes in.
Usually people that try to destroy all context, all nuance, and all, outstanding possibility. It's very much like non-compete. Do you remember non-compete and how he freaked out when Vosh brought up hypotheticals to him?
I remember the video, and he didn't freak out. He pointed out that Vosh's hypotheticals are fucking nonsense.
He said, "You're an idealist. You're an idealist. These hypotheticals." It's like, I'm literally
Well,
just trying to see if your thought process can, hold up to scrutiny.
no, he really wasn't. He was trying to. I mean, yes, you can use hypotheticals that way. Like, legit, people doing legit analysis use hypotheticals that way all the time when they're making an answer, when they're asking an honest question. Vosh wasn't doing that, and in that same fucking stream, he also went and brought out some anti-Semitic shit, some like just outright stand Nazi propaganda, OG Nazi propaganda, and Xanderhole, you did too, actually. So maybe this isn't a stream you should want people to remember.
Like, if a single possible scenario comes along, will your thought process hold up to it? That's all it was.
No, that isn't all it was. That's never all it was. His hypotheticals are completely bad faith.
And he freaked out, right? The
No,
same
he
would
didn't.
happen, I imagine, if I had a conversation with this person, because
Which you? Because I think if you had a conversation with this person where you took like 5 different completely mutually exclusive positions as you tried to justify your desire to occasionally do ableism, I think they would probably just keel over from all the whiplash.
Well, they're very devout in their positions. Someone
What do you mean? You don't know anything about them. If somebody asked how old they were, and you said, I don't know, but they have a business email. How do you know? What do you mean? And also, that's not what. Like, you keep on using devout in weird ways. But, like, you don't know anything about her except that she said a very accommodating thing that says, just please don't do ableism. And you're fucking dogpiling her.
like this doesn't believe that these words are harmful because of any, I would imagine, strong argument that they could, point to in every
Oh, well, I mean, if they cannot articulate their thoughts clearly, clearly enough to meet the exacting standards of Xanderhole, then obviously there must not be any good argument in favor of what they're saying.
single circumstance in which these words could be used, I think it's probably aesthetic. It's really aesthetic.
Wait. Okay, what the fuck does he think aesthetic means?
I imagine they felt like they were going to tweet that out and feel very brave and get a lot of, Twitter brownie points for it.
Uh, So you think this person doesn't know anything about Twitter?
There's a lot of twitty. I love them twitties. There's a lot of Twitter brownie points to be handed out in this space. I know that's a conservative talking point.
Yeah, it is a conservative talking point. It's funny how often what you say is just a conservative talking point, Xanderhole, the ex-Nazi.
Brownie points, but there are. I'm sorry. But, like, lefties love to pass around the brownie points in these Twitter circles for who virtue signals the hardest.
Okay, another far right fucking buzzword.
And it's real. It's true. Come on.
Yeah, the likelihood of it being true is inversely proportionate to the amount of time he says things like, it's true, come on.
Go, chat. Hypers, have you seen it? Come on. Raise of hands. Don't be shy. Raise of hands. You've seen it. You've all seen it. Don't pretend you haven't. Show your
What? What? Seen what exactly? People agreeing with a take that somebody has expressed? I think we've all seen that. Like, what the hell are Twitter brownie points other than, like, there will be people agreeing with you?
hands. Yeah, you've seen it. Anyway, if you
See, it was seeing what? Like seeing people, like, of course we've seen people agreeing with other people. Like, we've seen you and Vosh agreeing with Hitler.
enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon. Hell, if you didn't like the segment,
Oh wow, and in his chat, his Zanbot, um, is actually pushing the utter lie. See, as Vosh realized how badly he fucked up after he parroted literal Nazi propaganda about Jews and banks in that debate, and cut together hastily a version that made it look like non-compete. American Johnson was saying those things rather than outright rebutting them and saying that they wouldn't even, they wouldn't even talk with somebody who was, who was saying shit like that. And Xanderhole, through his Zanbot, is actually keeping alive that utter lie. God, I mean, wow, he's just such a fucking piece of work.
segment, comment down below and tell me exactly why you didn't. And of course, if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe and ring the bell icon so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And as always, you can follow my social media, link down below. That's where all the spiciest memes happen, particularly on my Twitter. And
God, I don't want to hear this. I mean, like, what's that, the extra mayonnaise there? Like, are you bringing out the fucking Dijon mayonnaise?
in my fan Discord. And of course, if you want to support me financially so that I can continue to make content for you guys and I won't at best be making $8 an hour managing a Cinnabon in Omaha.
See, the thing is, I also don't want him to have anything to do with fucking cinnamon rolls. It's like He's given me just, it's like the two button meme. Oh, is that what that is? Because I'm just sitting here thinking, it's a Better Call. I've never seen Better Call Saul mask. I did not know this, but I'm just sitting here thinking, I would. There's the one button, and that's keep Xanderhole streaming, and the other one is let Xanderhole anywhere near your food, and it's like. Can I disable both buttons? Can I is there a panel I can just sort of cut the wire?